hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing okay. Okay, just 1 second, guys. Let's see here.
What's going on?
Just 1 second, guys. 1 second. Trying to sort something out.
All right.
Okay. All right, guys. Sorry about that. I had a lot of things going on. So, what's happening right now is that Phil is um on a show as we speak on Facebook. No audio. Oh, sugar. Okay, 1 second. Let me no audio. Let me just 1 second. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I have sound now? Okay, right. So I'm going to share the link to Phil's stream on Facebook. And the link to the Facebook page is on this stream. So please sign up to the Barbados Humanist. There is Phil and also Cynthia McDonald. They're going to go live. So Phil wanted this also streamed onto his YouTube page. So off we go.
And with a plan. And I've been doing lots of research since we decided as a group that we would tackle this topic. And just for some context, what are these crimes? Some persons might ask, what are these crimes that you're talking about? So we're talking about the crimes that would have been executed by European powers. One being that they enslaved Africans and instructed genocide on indigenous communities. Two, they created the legal and financial policies necessary for the enslavement of Africans, refused compensation to the enslaved, but compensated the slave owners, and imposed another 100 years of racial apartheid and another 100 years of policies which perpetuated suffering. The CARICOM Reparations Commission specifically, which was formed in 2013, calls upon European governments to participate in the CARICOM Reparations Justice Program with a view to prepare these victims and sufferers for full admission with dignity into the citizenry of the global community. The CRC, which is the CARICOM Reparations Committee, outlines the path to reconciliation, truth, and justice for victims and their descendants with this 10-point action plan. One, a full formal apology, and we'll go into more of this as we go through later. Two, repatriation. Three, Indigenous Peoples Development Programs. Four, the development of cultural institutions. Five, attacking the public health crisis. Six, illiteracy eradication. Seven, African knowledge programs. Eight, psychological rehabilitation. Nine, technological transfer. And 10, debt cancellation. So we'll be hearing more on this as we go through. And right now, I just want to take a chance to introduce our panelists. First, I'll introduce Cynthia. Cynthia McDonald is an infectious diseases medical case manager where she
We love
works with people living
Cynthia.
with HIV in the city of Chicago. She authors a blog called freedmenhealthandwellness.com, which
Oh,
speaks on the social determinants of the health of Black Americans that descend from chattel slavery. She has been a guest on several podcasts and a host on the
fantastic, Paul.
nonprofits
Thank
produced
you.
by the Atheist Community of Austin and Women of Atheists Unload, produced by the Skeptic Haven channel. Cynthia is also a health and political advocate that works with various organizations in Chicago and nationally to achieve social and economic justice for Black freedmen descendants. She also pushes for health equity for marginalized groups in the United States and normalizing atheism amongst the Black community. Cynthia is
Normalizing
also a
atheism.
musician, which kind of beats
Something.
at my heart here, that writes and performs a variety of genres of music, including classical, R&B, and dance. So welcome, Cynthia. It's really great to have you here. Really great for you to agree to join us and participate in this discussion. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Our second guest is Philip Grant. Philip Grant
Yay,
has been a
Philip.
science and mathematics educator for 27 years and is the head of science at Lester Vaughan School here in Barbados. He's also known in the YouTube sphere as Phil G. the Skeptic Atheist, or Phil the Skeptic Atheist. Did I say that right, Philip? Sorry if I got it wrong.
Yeah.
He's a YouTube content creator, and his YouTube channel is The Skeptic Secularist, the CSS show. He passionately works to encourage skepticism, rational thought, humanism, secularism, and atheism. He is also a humanist secularist and a member of Humanist Barbados, and he has CSEC Caribbean history at grade 2 and is passionate about discussing the role of religion, especially Christianity, why it played in slavery. He is a host or co-host on the Afro-Humanist, the Global Atheist, which is produced by Skeptic Haven, and has made a guest appearance on several other atheist shows. So welcome, Philip. Thank you. Philip's a part of our community here in Barbados. Thank you for joining us.
Having it. Thank you for having me here.
Okay, great.
Great.
All right, so I want to welcome all of you. Lalu is the Vice President of Humanist Barbados. I am the President of Humanist Barbados, and we are going to be co-moderating this discussion this evening. And I'm going to give a chance now for the panelists to just say something briefly, and then we will get going from there. So, Philip, why don't you go first? Give your introductions, remarks.
Right. Okay, I want to thank you all for having this discussion, because this is a very serious discussion, not only here in the Caribbean, but also United States and even I think in African countries also. Slavery has towards especially the Black people and other groups too have been really detrimental to their financial wealth, the social aspects of those groups. And to start off, I think we need to define what we mean by reparations and what we mean by slavery. Reparations is basically making amends for a wrong, one that can be a person or a country has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. And slavery is the practice or system of owning slaves, or you can even broader definition is a condition of having to work very hard without proper remuneration or appreciation. And we know this has been the case, throughout history, especially the history of the Black people, and that they were brought over without free labor for the plantocracy. Why do we need? Do you want me to get into that now, or
we'll get back into that? We'll turn around to that. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Cynthia, you can go next.
Sure. Hello again, everyone. And again, thank you for the Humanist Barbados Society for inviting me to have this very needed discussion about slavery and reparations and what that means. What whether it is united if we're talking about reparations here in the United States, which is something which is a an issue that I'm passionately committed to making sure happens, and I work with other various passionate people in organizations here in Chicago. One that I am part of is called the Freedmen Descendants of Chicago. I serve as general secretary, and I'm also a member of the NAASD, which is a national conglomerate of slavery descendants, chattel slavery descendants in the United States, where we are working on a political answer to a 266, 366, 400-year plus debt that the United States owes its descendants and the people who actually built the country. I am also a I'm also a descendant of slavery from the Caribbean. My mother or my maternal side is from Jamaica, and I can even trace my lineage through them to some of the slavery upheavalist, Samuel Tacky Sharp, who was an organizer who tried to actually work to organize the slaves in the plantation that he worked at, in order to make to basically unionize them to actually have proper rights and compensation for the work that they actually were doing. The slave plantation owners refused, and there was a riot, and he died in the riot. I believe that his statue is in Montego Bay to this day. It is said, and I was told that I am a descendant of this person. I'm not quite sure if that is the case, but if I am, I will be vehemently proud to be the descendant of a riotous
I'm trying to figure it out to People
upheavalist
Zulu.
who
Um, I
combated
think it's
this
talking
egregious
about
institution.
the Barbados people,
So
but
yeah,
hopefully we'll
I'm
figure it
looking
out.
forward to really getting to this discussion, what it would mean for the Caribbean as far as like reparations is concerned
It has
versus the United
Soren.
States,
Yeah.
why it's owed, and even how we can possibly use our concerted efforts to make sure that reparations becomes a reality for those who have been affected, because slavery,
Oh, and by the way,
especially
guys,
like when
this
we're
is a
talking about the
live
transatlantic slave trade, and
this is
also in
live
the
on
institution of slavery
Facebook.
has been
I'm
a
just
pariah
streaming this on
that
my
has affected
channel
Black
and
people
to
throughout
Fields,
this
but
particular
this is
portion of the
happening right
diaspora for
now.
years. And we even have
So this
holdovers
is a live
of
in a live.
policy
If you
from
get it,
like
a live
reparation,
in a
I'm sorry, not
live.
reparations, but slavery, specifically in the United States,
How's
Jim
everyone
Crow,
doing?
and
Soren,
even
People
the
Zulu,
actual
who else do we have in
non-payment
chat?
of
How are
slavery
you doing all?
descendants throughout the
AP Small,
diaspora, where
how are
we are
you all
still
doing?
seeking
Hope you're doing
compensation
well. How's
for
your
the work our
weekend going?
ancestors have put in,
Hey,
and also the
Mrs. Parker,
disenfranchisement that this
hello.
particular institution has wrought upon us. So we definitely need to have that discussion and continue to have that discussion, and make sure that it becomes a reality.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, so we're going to get straight into the questions that we have planned for today. Lalo, do you want to take? I'll just hand over to you. We will start at the top. Phil has started giving a little bit on it, but you can introduce the first question.
Greetings, everybody. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Lalu. I'm the Vice President of Humanist International. We have questions that we'll be asking.
Humanist Barbados.
Humanist Barbados, sorry, like not quite international.
Her mic is
We're on our
loud.
way. We're getting there. Yeah, before I start, I just want to comment. We have a person in Barbados who was acting as Prime Minister a while back, a person called Billy Miller. And I attended a public event in which she actually was speaking about slavery in Barbados. And and I'm paraphrasing her, this is not a direct literal quote, but she said, and I was amazed that she should say it. And she got a huge round of applause. I would have thought she should have got lots of boos for it, but this is what she said. The best slaves were brought to Barbados. Whilst the slaves in the other Caribbean islands were rioting, we were working. We have such a good work ethic. You know, it's amazing the mindset that some people have. She herself is the descendant of a slave, yeah? And she's saying that the best slaves were brought to Barbados, while the other on the other islands, people were rioting and whatever. We were working. You know, I'm still completely amazed by her statement. Anyway, getting back to where we are. The first question is, what does reparations mean, and why should we care about this? What does reparations mean, and why should we care about this? So maybe Cynthia, you can go first.
Yeah, in its most basic definition of what reparations means, it just means basically to repair a wrong, right? It's basically you are acknowledging that you have harmed another, and you are going to make right the harm that you have wrought on another person. So when we're talking about reparations in of itself for slavery, that's what the attempt is to do, is to, you know, redress and repair the harm that has been wrought on another individual or a group of people. In our particular cases, we're talking about the acknowledgement of governments for what their laws and practices were concerning the institution of slavery. So for Barbados specifically, it would be Great Britain. For the United States, it would be our United States government. Even though that I do believe that slavery descendants in the United States also have a claim against Great Britain, because slavery existed before the United States became a nation. But the first domino that has to fall is the United States government, because this is an entity that that allowed slavery to practice since 1776, from the inception of the nation all the way up to 1865. And we can even argue with some of the laws that we have to this day, including like the 13th Amendment, that slavery was not completely abolished in this country. So that is basically what it means. Now, why is it important, and why should we care about it? Well, you know, I'm not really sure about all the statistics concerning Caribbean people, specifically in Barbados, when it comes to the living conditions. However, I can spout them off of the top of my head in the United States. Currently, African Americans who descend from chattel slavery own less than 2% of the wealth, just opposed to over 90% that's owned by the white population. We're still at the highest when it comes to unemployment in the United States. Black men are almost half the population of the prison system, and yet they're only 6% of the nation's population. They're the sixth leading cause of death to Black men are police encounters in the United States. We have and can point to specific policies that have been wrought to this very day concerning Black people when it comes to basically their ending or their genocide. And when you keep people specifically away from wealth, from building wealth, and also regulating them as a bottom caste, this is still the crime that's being wrought to this day. And I constantly say that if we don't really get the actual reparative justice that Black people are due, specifically in the United States, and I would even say like globally, we are not going to survive as a people. We can pretty much forget about it, because everything here costs. I mean, you can't live in the United States or practically anywhere without having money, without having some type of form of assets, without having like some ways for you to make an income and even be able to pass on that particular wealth to your children. You can't do it. So if you have policies that we can specifically point to that kept Black people from being able to do this through slavery and also through Jim Crow. then we can also say that it is due. And in order for us to survive as a people, it has to be paid. The debt has to be paid.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Philip, would you like to say something on that?
Yes. Here, okay. Because of the slavery here, when the slaves were emancipated, a lot of the slaves, as you said, were not compensated for their hard work. So you found that the plantation owners, they were compensated, but a lot of them ended up being in the non-wealthy bracket and had to really struggle to try to make their way. And we know in Barbados that there was, and probably still is, some point, a divide between those that are white that will have gained lands, plantations from their ancestors who were slave owners. And but that people don't really own any plantations, those big spots of land, right? And then it is difficult, yes, to talk about having entrepreneurs and so on, but you need to have wealth. You need to have some sort of asset, as Cynthia said, to be able to start your business. And then on top of that, when you go to the bank and you don't have that, it's trouble getting funding to start your own business. So you find that a lot of people have, or even when you look at our foreparents who came just after the ancestors were freed, they struggled a lot to try to make their way. You had children, some of them have very large families. Some of the children could not be educated as they wanted to be. And I mean, now, because of the vision of Sir Walton Barrow, trying to create a middle class society, putting money into education, we end up having free education. But there are a lot of countries up to a few years ago, Caribbean countries, who don't have the free education, or still does not have the free education that we have here in Barbados, and they have to pay for their books. It is a struggle. Some of them drop out of after leaving primary school. They can't go on to secondary education, etc. So they definitely the slavery issue has had a real negative impact on the Caribbean islands. And one other thing I want to say is Barbados was the society that England used as the model for slave plantations, and shipped that model even to North Carolina, to the Carolinas, right? Barbados model, the model of the plantation with slaves, that was carried over to Carolinas. They learned, and other Caribbean islands learned from Barbados that time. And we had a large slave population.
Quite right, Philip. In fact, we even argued it was a form of industrialized slavery. It was so well worked out, according to your making there. It's industrialized slavery. At this point, I'll hand back to Michelle for her to continue now with her next question. Michelle?
Okay, so I've had some experiences talking with many persons here in Barbados concerning slavery, and one of the many responses I get from many people would be, just need to move forward. Too much talk about slavery. Too much talk about slavery. It's time to stop talking about it. Just let go of the past. move forward, do what you can with what you have, and be thankful. Be thankful and move on. So I want to say, isn't it time we stop talking about slavery? What do you respond to that, Cynthia first?
The short answer is no. No, no, we can't stop talking about a topic that has not been addressed at a proper level. It hasn't. If we're still experiencing all the ills that slavery has wrought against Black people, and we have governments that are committed to actually making sure those ills have been repaired, then no, we can't stop talking about it. This we talk a lot specifically in the United States about the racial wealth gap. I alluded to it earlier. And, it's crazy how, and I even told this to my partner, I said, slavery was horrible, right? But it's actually the 100 years of, like what you said, apartheid or Jim Crow that really did us as a people in. We like I think specifically of redlining. I don't know if you all are familiar with the term redlining, but for our audience who is not familiar with redlining, here in the United States, this is a government policy where they allowed the banks to draw red lines around certain areas of different municipalities, townships, villages, etc., where they would not invest, they would not give loans, they would not they would not contract or anything like that. And these happen to be in townships where it's predominantly African American. So we still have to this day communities that are like distinctly different from those who happen to be communities that are predominantly white versus non-white, specifically African American. So these are policies that's just one. I can name a few, but that's just one policy that really did Black people in order for them not to be able to garner wealth. And I was even watching a documentary the other night because I did a panel at the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. And in the evening time, they were doing a documentary specifically on Mexican Americans who immigrated to the United States, specifically in the area that I live in, around the late 19 teens or early 1920s. And you had a significant population of Mexican men who were able to go into the army. They served in World War II, they served in the Korean War, and they even served in the Vietnam War. And a lot of them were able to get GI Bills. GI Bills is basically a promise from the government that says, like, hey, if you serve in various armed services in the United States, then there's certain things that we'll do for you. We'll go ahead and let you be able to purchase a house with no money down. We'll pay for your college. You can even use that money to even start a business if you want. And I remember one of the veterans actually saying that, oh yeah, like I used the GI Bill and I bought 3 houses. Well, that same policy was actually doled out by the states. Even though it was a federal policy, that policy was basically controlled by, like, let's say for instance, like the state that I'm in is Illinois versus Mississippi, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of the Black GIs who were coming back from World War II and on were not able to get the GI Bill in order for them to use that particular nest egg to like purchasing a house, just opposed to their other white counterparts. And even though, like, some people may argue, well, like Hispanics are not necessarily, they're a different race, but Hispanics that's not a race, that's an ethnicity. So you have like Hispanics that actually who would actually identify on paperwork as white. So and even though that you have a good amount of them that doesn't necessarily want to, but the way that the demographics actually work here in the United States, like sometimes you just don't have a choice. So if you're able to actually settle in some type of guise under white, then there's going to be certain certain things that's going to be afforded to you then versus not being white, right? So, and this is something that has happened that has not been addressed. You did not necessarily see a contingency of African American GIs be able to use the GI Bill until after 1970. So you had a policy that was enacted in 1944, and then after 1970, mostly like about a couple of years after the Fair Housing Act was actually signed into law, which Black people absolutely marched for, protested for, and implored their government in order for them to be able to sign that into law, then they were able to take advantage of a policy that they should have had all along. These are a lot of the different examples that we are facing as a people. And again, those things have not been addressed. So if we haven't even addressed like the elephant in the room, which is slavery, versus all the policies that came after slavery. You know, we have like the flooding of African American townships versus all the policies that came after townships that were destroyed by fire. We had race riots that were perpetuated by other white organizations, and you know that took away wealth from Black people. So these are the things, and a lot of those things we can say unequivocally are followed through the legacy of slavery. So that's why we can't stop talking about it, because none of these things have been addressed in a holistic manner. I mean, like, an apology is good. Like, I yeah, sure, say sorry. But at the same time, we also need the policies after that to address, to repair that harm that has been wrought to these people.
Yes, yes, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, so it really baffles me, especially when we see in Barbados, and in the Caribbean, one of the issues that we have here is our public health crisis with chronic diseases, which is directly related to the nutritional experience, the brutality and the stress profiles associated with slavery, genocide, and apartheid. And I think in general, persons aren't aware of these connections. A lot of persons aren't aware of these connections to slavery, and they might say these things sometimes in just not knowing, not knowing. Philip, you have anything to add?
Yes. The event, for those who might not know what Cynthia meant with the Jim Crow laws, Jim Crow's thing, it was a set of laws, state and local laws enforcing racial segregation. We had something like that here in Barbados up into, I think, 50s, early 60s, where Black Barbadians could not walk in certain areas. They had to walk on one side of the road in certain areas like George Street, Strathclyde, and they weren't allowed in those residential areas after 6 p.m. I remember my parents talking about that, right? And you will find out that a lot of those buildings that are owned by the white persons are now commercial buildings, which means that they're profited from having those buildings, residents, because they're still there. A lot of them are still there. They have refurbished some, and but you imagine the amount of money they will make from selling their properties to a commercial entity. So they benefited from that, but the Black people would not have been able to purchase any of those residential lots. A lot of Black people will not have been able to do that.
Yeah, imagine working on land for over your descendants and your descendants, and working on land for 400 years, and then you have no claim to it. You have none whatsoever, and you're just starting from scratch, from nothing.
From nothing.
So this question about this thing about we need to stop talking, we do not need to talk more, we need to educate more, we need to tell our children more, so they know and they keep pressing for it. Yeah.
It is, and I will just, there's something that Sir Hilary Beckles said in his book. I just want to read a short excerpt.
Okay, go on. And then when he finishes the excerpt, Lalu, you can go next, okay? Yeah.
Yeah. right? He said, and I quote, white inheritors of the wealth of criminal enrichment remain politically unrepentant and financially dominant. Despite their political ascendancy in contemporary society, Black descendants remain marginalized within the wealth management and ownership structures and cultures of the national economy. That is true. Political power has been no balm for the physical and psychic pain associated with 3 centuries of plantation tyranny. Passions from the past continue to shape social understandings of the present. The discontent brews beneath the social surface. It boils and spews periodically in the form of popular protests, but quickly evaporates. Billy Miller? The society settles again, and the sins of slavery sink once more to the bottom, but they are not forgotten. Some wish to forgive, but none to forget. To litigate, it is said, is to promote hate. Yet the reparatory justice discourse, like sugarcane, is growing everywhere. On both sides of the Atlantic, the official narrative of slavery is still read and received as quote unquote old story time. A past devoid of political agency and best set aside. A rising popular discourse, however, is calling for radical agency and social justice based on research into the judicial origins and ending of the enterprise, end quote. And that's from his book, The First Black Slave Society, Britain's Barbarity Time in Barbados, 1636 to 1876. As I said,
Thank you.
Barbados started the whole
I just
thing
downloaded
in the Americas and here in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I just downloaded that book, by the way. And I also wanted to bring back, since we're quoting people, you know, how this conversation concerning we shouldn't talk about it because it was something that happened a long time ago. I wanted to bring up something that Dr. King said. This was was part of a speech that he gave before the March on Washington in 1964. At the same time, when America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest. It meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order for them to mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the Black man that he ought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. Now, what he was referring to was the Homestead Act of 1862. This particular policy lasted for over 114 years. The government granted more than 270 million acres of land while the law was in effect. And the passage of the Federal Land Policy and Management Act in 1976 repealed the Homestead Act in the 48 contingent states, but it did grant an additional 10-year extension on claims in Alaska. So we had even this particular policy lasting until the 1980s, where folk who were mostly white was able to take advantage of this. They were just claiming land, stayed on that particular land, and they got it for free. And they were able to use that particular land. Matter of fact, Dr. Darity, which is one of the foremost experts on reparations in the United States, stated that over 40, I believe over 40 million white Americans to this day are living off of the wealth of that one policy. So how are we going to say specifically that, oh, this happened a long time ago, we shouldn't talk about it, when on the opposite side, while slavery was still in operation, white people were getting grants specifically from the government in order for them to build their wealth and pass it on to their descendants that they are still utilizing to this day. This is not something that happened with Black people. Matter of fact, that particular Homestead Act, about 6,000 Black families were able to take advantage of the policy, but most of them lost their land through land theft, lynchings, and the like. And enforcement of previous policies like the Oregon Land Donation Act of 1850 barred Black citizens from owning land and real estate. And in 1866, shortly after the end of the Civil War, the Southern Homestead Act was supposed to function much like that original act. But during the first year of the SHA, unoccupied Southern land was offered exclusively to African Americans, exclusively from African Americans to loyal whites. But after 1867, even landless former Confederate applied and was able to get that land. And if we're talking about former Confederates, these were treasonous people who fought against the Union in order for them to have their own country. Yet they actually should have been under the jail. That's what should have happened. But instead, wait out a little while longer and you can go ahead and get your land back. And so like when we were talking about specifically how plantation owners, like not only in the Caribbean, but also here in the United States, were able a lot of times to get their land back through a government policy, it was granted to them because of their status as considered white. But law forbade that from being happening to Black people. So that's why I said this legacy is something that we're still living under to this day. That's why we can't stop talking about it until it has to be talked about, pushed, advocated for, eventually pushed by our elected officials to make a reality for policy to be actually enacted.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think it's very graphic to think about slavery from the perspective of a business. Clearly, in the days of slavery, the plantocracy in the context of the Caribbean and obviously the cotton plantations and so on as well in America, didn't have to pay any wages, any salaries. And imagine a business that's actually operational, not having to pay any salaries to its staff. A large part of expenses that a business incurs is wages. In fact, I was told by a businessman recently, it's something like 60 to 70% of the expenditure of his business. And imagine not having to have that 60 or 70% expenditure. It's all profit. You know, Marx spoke about surplus value, but this is exaggerated surplus value in effect. You know, all of that is just staying in the plantocracy's pockets. The question I've been asked to ask you is this: how would the people really benefit from reparations? Won't all the money go to the government? So how would the masses, in effect, benefit from reparations if the money is going to the government? And before I ask you to answer, just recently, for example, the German government gave, from recollection, something like €1 billion to the Namibian government as compensation for atrocities committed by their troops, by the German troops, 100 years ago, or 100 and something years ago, at the turn of the last century, or previous century. We've noted as well that the president of Namibia now has bought himself a second presidential jet. Yeah. So
sound like a pastor.
The question is, how will the people benefit from reparations?
Yeah, did you want to start, Philip, or did you want me to jump in on that?
I will
You
let
can
Philip go
start.
first since you were. Well,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, right.
Well, Philip can go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Philip, and
I
then I'll
think that,
follow up.
okay. Um, I think this is where you have to have some sort of regulatory body set up to make sure that the monies are going where they're supposed to, because I don't think putting it in the hands of government directly uh, is really a good idea. Because as we know from the past, monies that were set to be for certain things end up going to other things, especially certain things that were very really needed, that we really needed, end up going into other stuff that was not really needed. So I think a regulatory body needs to be set up to manage and make sure that the monies, and I would say an independent body, um, to set up to make sure that the money goes where it's supposed to. And especially, I mean, we know that the government will have to pass legislation and um, for to have certain, like from the 10-point action plan, psychological things through psychological rehabilitation, technology transfer, things like that. For the education, um, you know, cultural institutions, right? So I think a regulatory body will need to be set up in that case, not putting it directly in the hands of government, because we know what happens when it goes in, like what happened in Namibia.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Philip. Cynthia, would you like to comment?
Yes, I do. So as far as like the 10-point plan, the CARICOM, and also like NCOBRA and NARC, which are organizations that CARICOM actually works with specifically here in the United States, I have to divorce myself from what they consider reparations is, because at the beginning of any type of like reparative justice program, we're talking, it should be direct payments to those who have been harmed. Now, as I'm not opposed to education, I'm not opposed to canceling debts. I got a student loan right now that I wish would go away, okay? And that would really help my entire life if it would. However, one of the issues that I have against any type of entity that wants to insert itself to regulate reparations is like they have a tendency to gatekeep what belongs to the people. So I know here in the United States, the U.S. Treasury is actually responsible for paying out different legislations when it comes to who has been harmed. I think specifically of a case that was wrought where the French government paid out so much money to the United States, specifically to Jewish Holocaust victims that were living in the United States. Those, even though like France, gave the money per se or paid the money per se, but the money was specifically set up through the Treasury, through people who made their claim, and it went directly to the people. So as far as like a regulatory body is concerned, I know one of the things that we are pushing through the NAASD, which is the National Association of American Slave Descendants, is to reset up the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau was a government regulatory body that operated right after slavery for, I want to say, less than 7 years. And it was responsible for actually handling things like education, a regulatory body that were, to set up schools, hospitals, housing, food for ex-slaves in the United States. We wanted to revamp that particular bureau, which can totally handle as far as like any type of, you know, reparative justice program that goes into effect for those who are still living under the legacy of slavery descendants from the United States. So this is something that can totally be done. But as far as like at the crux of it, it has to be direct payments. And I know that, you know, the United States actually has a long history of doing reparative work since the 1700s. They've been doing it, and they were able to, you know, pay through their particular bodies and entities like the Treasury, money, land, and other you know, things that happen to be deemed for whomever was wrought harm, directly from the government to the people. As long as legislation exists that the language shows that this is something that has to happen, then that's what's going to happen. That way we don't have to worry about things like a president buying like another jet. Like, that's why I say, you know, when you said the president of Namibia ended up buying like another private jet, I said, yeah, that sounds like, you know, some pastors that I know saying, you know, these are preacher machines. I need to go ahead and get me another jet, right? God said. But, you know, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that if the language is right in legislation, then we can make sure that those particular things go directly to the people instead of being hung up just by government entities.
But just following up on that, you said to go directly to the people. How would you actually find the people who would be receiving it? I mean, there's so many. There's lots of intermarriage over the years, and I mean, what constitutes a descendant? What percentage of a person's DNA would have to be of African descent in order to qualify?
Well,
that,
okay, that's a great question, actually. In Dr. William Darity's book, From Here to Equality, Reparations for the 21st Century, he actually addresses that question. And DNA does not even have to be a factor. Here in the United States, and I also know this to be a fact in various Caribbean countries, because Great Britain are excellent record keepers. We can actually trace lineage through records specifically to slavery here. I was able to do it in 30 minutes. So he actually says that a person who is a descendant of an enslaved ancestor, at least through one line, were able to, and also who has been, how did he put it? I'm just going to paraphrase, who basically has identified as Black or African American for at least about 12 years. And when a reparations program has been deemed in the United States, should be eligible for reparations. The first census that was taken after slavery was abolished was in 1870. And often the people who had been slaves still kept some of their old jobs, per se, because you had a lot of sharecropping in the United States. So a lot of times when you see like farmer or maid or something to that effect, you can use that particular record as far as, like, you know, being able to start the process of finding out who, you know, who has been, who is a descendant. Another thing, this is actually from the Smithsonian here in the United States. Black immigration in the United States was to the right of the decimal point, but until 1965. So the majority of people who were Black in the United States were descendants of chattel slavery. I know specifically that my grandfather did not come to the United States until 1943. I have the record as far as like, the shipping record coming from a black male from Jamaica, specifically Westmoreland, who came to the United States through Louisiana and then through Ellis Island. And I saw his naturalization records as far as like becoming a citizen in 1957. My mother didn't get here until 1960, 1961. A lot, but the majority of my relatives on my maternal side didn't come here until like the 80s, like the 1970s and 80s. And that was after we had like some of the changing of immigration laws, especially to, predominantly Black countries like the Caribbean. And then in the 80s and 90s, specifically from African countries. We can track all of that. So I know that like a lot of people say that, oh, it's going to be too difficult in order for them to determine their lineage. No, it's not. Like I said, we have census records, we have bills of sale, as far as like, when it comes to like who bought who, and are able to trace those things back. And also, like I said, like I know, that my maternal side are immigrants, like, those who are descendants of immigrants, specifically in the United States, who are Black. We know where we come from. We know who our people are. We know that, because this information is very much so available, can be looked up, and also it can be corroborated by who our parents are. So, it's not that difficult to be able to delineate, okay, who is who are slavery descendants and who are not. And, another thing too is like again, like I said, I'm not as aware specifically of like all the record keeping, specifically like, in Barbados or the Caribbean. But, according to, from what I have found out, even talking to family members, like I said, Great Britain and the British system of record keeping was excellent. And they were able to keep records from far, 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 far long ago. I had even had like a cousin on my mother's side who actually was able to, pull together pieces as far as like lineage concerns to slavery in Jamaica, by using records as far as like paperwork is concerned, bills of sales are concerned.
What about
And,
your father's side?
But you see that
we're going to get there, honey. and also, another thing too, this was brought up as well when I was doing a discourse with the ACA. Specifically in the United States, a lot of African Americans use their family Bibles as records, so they were able to actually write in who married who, who's parent to who, where they lived, where they came from, things of that nature. Matter of fact, I have a client who was telling me, yeah, I have like a couple of family Bibles that actually went through this whole particular list of like who all my parents are from, where they came from in the South, where they lived, all this other stuff, so there's like a lot of different records that can corroborate one person actually coming from that institution of slavery in the United States. So, and it's not something that is a big concerning point, even though like a lot of people try to make it, as one. It's, yeah.
Okay, at this point, I'll hand back to Michelle. Then Michelle will continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Cynthia. Philip, I'm going to ask you the question first. Why should European countries take any notice of the claim for reparations? I've seen here, based on what's happening here in CARICOM, that response is null, void, no apology, maybe regrets, and there's been lots of meetings, lots of events, lots of hearings, lots of talking, lots of more talking, but
luncheon, whole lot of luncheons.
So much that the majority of persons who we talked to, we hear in terms of when we were doing this event, they were like, oh, are we still talking about this? Reparations will never be paid. Just move on, people. But what do you like? Why should they take notice of the claim for reparations. This is in Barbados, the Caribbean,
Mhm.
and also in the States when Cynthia asks.
Right. As I said before, the European countries, man was talking about Barbados being base for the represented the model for slavery. Remember, it was Great Britain. Barbados is a British island, and there are a lot of other British Caribbean islands, and of course, European base. Then the Europeans, France. There's still Guadeloupe. Guadeloupe, Martinique. A lot of those. There's Curacao. The Europeans were here. They brought people to work. They brought slaves here.
Well, they
And,
brought Africans and made them slaves.
African
right?
slaves, especially
Africans and
they
made
were
them
also,
slaves.
but also I found that they also brought Irish slaves during I think it was the Civil War in England. Irish slaves were shipped to Barbados too, and I think they're the ones that were called the poor whites, or what they call the poor whites here, right? But the majority, of course, is the African slaves, and they benefited from the free labor, as Lalu pointed out. 60 to 70% of of uh, um, of what you pay out is usually in labor. So they benefited, they profited, they built their economies off of slavery in the Caribbean and the United States. And of course, they had some other areas too, right? They built they built their economies, they strengthened their economies for that. And even up to, I always talk about cable and wireless, how they used to be raping the Caribbean. When I read and I found out that it was the Caribbean islands that were buttressing cable and wireless in the UK. I said, look, colonialism, even up to until when the governments decide to open the communication market to other companies. I know before that, we were being raped. I know Caribbean islands that were raped. Luckily, we have the not it used to be called the Fair Trading Commission replaced.
Okay.
Right? The body that controls communications at that time.
Okay.
And luckily we had those. A lot of other Caribbean islands did not have those regulatory bodies. So I realized, because I knew what was happening in some Caribbean countries, like Grenada, because they went to Grenada a number of times, right? And I know how they were being treated, because they did not have really a regulatory body to deal with what was happening there with the having just one telecommunication company, right? But I know that they actually buttressed. They said 80%. I think it was 80% of what
It is me, Maya. I'm
the
here.
profits in England came from Caribbean. So their economy has been buttressed. Remember when we were sending sugarcane to be processed in England? Even after slavery, processed in England, then shipped back here to be sold as granulated sugar. So they have profited a lot from the Caribbean islands and having that free slave labor. And they need to acknowledge that they need to repay the ancestors of the slaves, because in the Caribbean, unlike probably the United States, you have a lot of persons here. The majority of the people in the Caribbean islands are descendants of slaves.
Okay, Phil, I can pause you
So
there.
yeah,
I can pause you there. So based on the in terms of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, the official response from Britain, from European countries here, is that reparations are not going to be paid. So the UK government has said that there is no evidence that people are still suffering from the effects of the transatlantic trade in Africans. There is notes that both Tony Blair and David Cameron, this is from before, former prime ministers of UK, expressed their deep sorrow that it happened, but added that Caribbean people should get over it, stop dwelling in the past, and instead focus on the future. The president of France admitted responsibility for the tragedy that was the slave trade, but all he did was establish May 10th as a national day to honor those who suffered from enslavement. So we have national days, we have notes about getting over it, but and we have an official response which has said up to now that reparations are not going to be paid. I'll let Cynthia finish this question, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, man, that's some craziness. You know, it's interesting to me how, you know, the actual ones that benefited from this institution would tell the ones who have been harmed, or the descendants of the that have been harmed by the institution, that they're not owed, and that they're not still dealing with the legacy of slavery to this very day. How, Sway? How you gonna tell us that? That's crazy. You know, we talk about specifically buttressing economies, like Europe, specifically, like when you're looking at like England, like Great Britain, and also in the United States, profited and were able to become world powers, economic world powers, because of free labor. That's absolutely true. And and even when you see like the different goods and services that have been propagated through through the institution of slavery, it's quite evidential. So to say that there's no evidence that it has not affected these people to this very day is absolutely flying horse manure. Like, you know, how it baffles me how like these particular entities and government officials, like you know, that are held by like white European institutions, are able to actually form their mouths to say such egregious things, you know. And then especially like here in the United States, we can point specifically to different policies and practices that shows how slavery in of itself, the legacy of slavery and all the policies that came after it, actually damaged the African Americans' ability to create and keep wealth. You know, coming specifically into, I saw in the chat on YouTube how one person mentioned about like the summer of blood, which was like 1919. Around that particular area, you know, we had we had like townships burned down specifically by, you know, white folk, like Tulsa, like Rosewood. Here in Chicago, that was an issue. We had it in a lot of different places in the South and some northern cities as well. Wilmington, North Carolina, where, you know, businesses. Central Park used to be a township in New York that was predominantly Black American, but, you know, was completely, the residents were completely pushed out of that particular area, and now it's like basically like a nature preserve, and those people weren't compensated. their descendants weren't able to get money in order for them to move somewhere else and to be able to start a new life, or use that money from the government or from the New York Township in order for them to start businesses, educate their children, etc. So this is so for them to say, "Oh, there's no evidence." What are you talking about? Yes, there totally is evidence that Black people have been harmed by policies and the legacy of slavery here in the United States and also in the Caribbean. I remember years ago, I went to Jamaica to visit family members, and I remember specifically looking at some of the places where it's still underdeveloped. And I can just imagine, and a lot of times they were asking for us to, can you send back clothes? Can you send back food? Can you send back, can you get money? I was helping one of my aunts the other day so that she can purchase her medication. Even though that there's like a universal healthcare system somewhat in Jamaica, but if you don't necessarily have like all the wherewithal for income or a social net in order for you to stay afloat, you're gonna need help, and who they gonna call, right? So, like, I mean, if this is something that's still going on to this day, you can talk about, like Philip mentioned, how these particular areas were raped of their resources, were raped of being able to garner wealth and keep it for themselves, were raped of their own infrastructure in order for them to make viable societies. And this is the legacy that they're still living under. Like, it's kind of crazy how you have like a whole different country that doesn't necessarily have like the social network in order for them to undergird their citizens, and they have to look elsewhere in order for them to get things like medication, for them to get hospital bills being paid. And these are predominantly Black countries where slavery was at best at the height of making sure that the mother country of England was actually fortified. So, I personally would love to line each of those particular officials up, like Tony Blair and his sycophants, and even some of there are particular officials here in the United States who want to use that particular apologetic that slavery was a long time ago, get over it, and just start throwing pies in their face, because because that creates a mess, and you already have said something that is a complete hot mess.
Thank you,
Cynthia,
Cynthia.
in terms of, thank you, Michelle. In terms of reparations, what sort of figure um, would you be looking at in terms of per person, in terms of compensation, practically speaking? And if that figure is paid, would that then exonerate whoever it is who perpetrated slavery whenever? I mean, does that mean that the conversation about slavery comes to an end if theoretically or hypothetically speaking, whichever figure you're going to tell me now per person is paid, does that mean that henceforth there should be no more discussion about slavery because it's been paid? Is that because that would seem to be the obvious logical conclusion? But can you just give me that figure that you might have in mind?
Okay, who's going first? Philip?
Sorry?
Yeah, the figure. I don't know about figure, but I can say even if it's paid, the conversation should still continue, because we need to always learn from the history we passed, that it's not try not to be repeated, and it's not to be forgotten. It is part. Everything else they will talk about the history of Alexander the Great. That's way back. The church will talk about the history of the Bible way back. They are not forgetting those things, So why should we forget? Even if you paid, why should we forget? Because it's not to be forgotten. It is something, and slavery is still going on all like now. Human trafficking is occurring. So we have to still look at the historical aspect to see, to learn from that, not to be repeated and to keep people, reminding people that human beings enslave other human beings, and they still continue to do it, and we have to, it's a continual fight.
Thank you, Phil.
Right?
And
It's
I
a
agree
fight
with you that
because they are benefiting, again, it's profiting of people and not compensating them, profiting and causing serious harm, serious trauma. But I don't know what figure.
Yeah.
Maybe
But-
Cynthia will have a answer for that one, the figure.
Yeah, but okay, well, Cynthia, you have a go. See if you can. I mean, if tomorrow the European Union says yes, look, we're apologizing and we're terribly, exceedingly sorry for whatever happened, and we want to compensate for slavery. We want to give reparations. What figure are we looking at per person?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah,
figure?
as far as like the European Union saying, hey, we want to pay, slavery descendants, money to compensate them, I'm with Phil. I have no idea what that would be. I know that there's a lot more like smarter economists than I who can, come up with a figure that actually makes sense. I know specifically here in the United States, we oftentimes discuss the racial wealth gap. So like going back to Dr. Darity in his book, he talks about, starting at least 12 to 14 trillion dollars as to start with actually addressing as slavery reparations. Now, is that per person? No. He discusses usually like between 800 to 900,000 per family, Black descendant family, which is like, on average a family of 4, and paying over at least about a 10-year mark. So I mean, like, I'm not sure if that is going to, address all the ills. I don't necessarily think that just like, okay, we're just going to give you money over a certain time period and then you should be good, will ever make anybody good, right? Because we're talking about a series of atrocities because of this institution that has been wrought against the people. So one of the things that we definitely have to continuously do, and is to make sure that this history is being taught and being continuously discussed. So like Phil was talking about, we're not repeating. I think of like the Jewish Holocaust victims, even though they have like, there's been several plans from several different European countries that are paying victims, the victims and their descendants to this day. They have a motto that says never forget, which comes with their museums, what comes with curriculums, and geez, ask Yeezy, let you say something anti-Semitic here, especially here in the United States, you gonna feel the burn of it. You know what I'm saying? So this is because like they're saying like, no, like this particular this particular talk, this particular rhetoric, etc., can be harmful, and it can be something that like sets into motion particular patterns that can be harmful to us. Like I think specifically about Jewish people, there, the Holocaust was not the only time in their history where they experience harm because they've been blamed for something. I think specifically about the Black Plague in Germany, and I want to say like at its height, there was a township that was mostly filled with Jewish people who they were killed, they were maimed, they were harmed because they were blamed for actually bringing the bubonic plague to that particular area, and so they're very. I'm sorry.
Anti-Semitism.
Yeah, anti-Semites, right? So they're quite familiar with how anti-Semitism in of itself can be something that can be wrought in action by individuals and government entities that will cause them harm and damage. We can say the same thing specifically for Black folk. Like when we have like anti-Blackness speech, when we have anti-Blackness policy, when we have anti-Blackness sentiment, which is an outlier from slavery in of itself, that can still be a perpetuator of harm to us as a group of people. And that's why we can't necessarily just sweep that particular thing under the rug, even if the United States and or the European Union, Great Britain's, now that Brexit has been a thing, decides that, yeah, we were wrong. We're going to go ahead and pay slavery descendants compensation for this.
I fully agree that history is there. History has to be remembered. It cannot be forgotten. But and I understand we need to be wrapping up shortly. So I'm going to keep this a bit short here. If in fact $14 trillion was in fact handed out as reparations, wouldn't that in effect create such massive inflation that the $14 trillion would be worth nothing, and so people would just be getting paper? I was reading recently, for example, in Argentina, on a daily basis, in fact, even during the day, prices are going up. People are in a bread line queuing up for bread, and on the board it has one price for the bread, and by the time they get to the counter, the price has doubled or something because of the massive inflation currently in Argentina. $14 trillion coming into an economy would create a similar scenario, practically speaking. So I'm wondering whether really, rather than financial reparations, we should be looking at systemic reparations. Those red lines that you were referring to earlier, the reform of international institutions like United Nations Security Council, taking away from the veto or giving the veto to the African Union, perhaps.
Stephen, I got this, Arthur. Don't worry about it. I got it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lalu.
Yeah. So because it sounds exciting. It sounds wonderful to get $14 trillion, but from an economic point of view, $14 trillion coming into an economy will create such massive inflation that the $14 trillion will probably only be worth $2 million, in no time at all, because the money will be devalued.
Okay.
So I would have thought institutional change is probably a better route to go in terms of but I think Michelle has a final question she wants to ask. So I'm just let Michelle.
I would like to address that, actually. If you don't mind, Lalu, I really do like to address your statement as far as like inflation is concerned. So Dr. Darity, and again in his book, is an economist. So one of the things that he was addressing specifically is a terminology called modern monetary. Gosh, I wish I knew the whole thing. Regardless of that, this is why the $14 trillion is not just it's not just money that is being to Black people who are the slavery descendants. We're talking about different programs plus and also direct payments, and these are going to be systemic changes like you mentioned, and also direct payments that's going to happen over a series of time. It's not just going to be just like a one-time deal where we're just interjecting $14 trillion in the economy in of itself directly to these people. Okay, so and the reason why he mentioned making sure that we are doing this over a time period is to combat the issue of inflation. But one thing that I do like to make to actually state that here in the United States, when we had when we were dealing with the pandemic, the government cut a check for like $2.2 trillion in less than a week. And we didn't have like massive inflation that happened at that particular time period until much, much later. But we can, you look at other contributing factors that actually came from that. So it's not like it's something that we can't control for as far as like inflation is concerned. We can just make sure that it is actually controlled as far as like how this particular money is being doled out at that time, so that we don't necessarily have to worry about inflation being such an issue going forward.
Okay, just to wind up, and there's some questions that people have asked as well in the chat. Speaking now as atheists yourself, Cynthia and Philip, how has religion and faith, if at all, helped the reparations cause? So now you're wearing an atheist hat, both of you. Philip, would you like to go first? How has religion and faith helped the reparations cause, if at all? Philip?
Okay. Um, I think that for the most part he has not, and depends because when you really look at it, part like the established church, let's say in Caribbean, they were part of the slavery. The Miami plantation owners, a lot of them belonged to the established church at the time. And the church played a major role, the established church especially played a major role, and even some of the other churches, people within the churches. I know in the United States, the Southern Baptists, they supported slavery because slavery, as we established before, is in the Bible, right? And the Bible does not speak against slavery, contrary to what some apologists will love to say. Um, but the slavery, the church and faith, I know there's some churches who are asking for reparation. I don't know about here, but I think it's in the United States, some black churches, right, Cynthia? There's some.
Yeah, you do have matter of fact, I think the last thing that I saw like was like the Baptist convention that's mostly of black churches that came together to make a case for
Right.
reparations for slavery. Yeah, so you do have
Yeah,
like a calling of some you know, black churches here in the United States for reparations.
right. But here I know the established church, which will be in in Barbados, will be the Anglican Church, and
Mm,
they will have participated in, and I think I saw an article where they were making an apology
yeah,
because you can't deny it,
yeah.
and then then of course there because another thing too, even some of the churches that was, well, I would say persons within those churches that supported abolition, but there were some persons who did not in
Right.
those churches, right? Support in the other evangelical churches did not support abolition because of the concept of this thing that Ham, that the black people are from Ham, uh, Ham's
Descendants of
descendants,
Cain,
and
descendants of Cain,
they're
yeah.
cursed by
Yeah.
Nod, so they're cursed and so on, using these same Bible that all Christians use, and to make that point to say, oh yeah, it's okay to enslave them because they were cursed,
Hmm.
right? I mean, people over time have realized it's not a good thing, but there are some persons in evangelical churches I've heard made some really poor excuses for support of slavery, and so I don't think that those persons are not in those churches are not going to push for reparations because they don't see anything wrong with slavery of black people or slavery as a whole. And I know some of the excuses are, oh, it is indentured servitude. Ah, no. Uh, if the Bible talks about indentured servitude in terms of the Hebrew family.
Right.
When it came to outside persons from foreign lands, nope, they can be chattel slave
Right.
as property passed on to their children, etc. So if you have churches that hold that view, they are not going to support reparations. And then because of the particular situation, I don't know if some are going to actually push for it, as but there are some who said yes, they are trying to push for it, but I don't know about here, in the United States.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Cynthia?
Yeah, actually, like I talked specifically about this in a couple of addresses that I made at the Better conference in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and also last year at the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. You know, one of the things that I mentioned that Black Americans specifically are at the bottom of every socio and economic uh, statistic, except for one, our God belief. So I don't understand how we can make a case for faith and religion to be a saving grace, especially in this particular area, when it has never been our saving grace. You know, I would even think, like, I know that you all went out to talk to people and asked folk, like, you know, where was God during slavery? And
Mhm.
if God was so against slavery, how come it does not say so in the Bible? And we're talking about not only just the Old Testament, which some people will wax apologetics, like, well, no, well, slavery was something that was condoned in the Old Testament, but not in the New. Pish posh. You know, then why the majority of the New Testament was written by Paul? And he said in Ephesians and Colossians for slaves to obey their masters as it is
Right.
fit in the Lord. You know, this is the Bible. I was telling you all earlier how I got into a whole discourse on Facebook when I mentioned that it is never okay for one human being to own another human being as property. And a Christian apologist tried to come at me and say that, you know, well, the definition of owning property is blah, blah, blah. But, you know, some atheists don't get the etymology of what the context in the Greek, in the Hebrew, and the Aramaic when it comes to what is a slave, and then rounded it all about to say that slavery was a voluntary institution. I'm like, no, it wasn't. You know, if you're talking about, as Philip mentioned, that in the Hebrew sense, and this is actually for Hebrew men, that they can actually dole themselves out to pay off a debt and be indentured to whoever who owns that debt for a certain amount of time period, and then he's free to go. And in the year of Jubilee, they were able to actually cancel debts. But if you were a woman, or, you know, a child, that was not the case for you. And if you were from a different nation, you can purchase slaves and you can hold them in perpetuity, and you can also bequeath them to your descendants, your children. It says so specifically in the Bible. I don't know what type of mental contortions a person would have to go to in order for them to actually say that. Well, you have to look at the context of it. And if you look at the etymology of this particular word when it comes to this, and et cetera, that's BS. This is a book that absolutely condones slavery. It was used by different entities, like especially the church, in order for them to justify slavery. And to say that, like, you know, we can use our faith and how we, our relationship with God, to keep to liberate us is absolutely bananas. So
I'm
nah.
I'm, I'm from Guyana, and the Anglican Church there actually had its own slave plantations in Guyana, but directly. So it wasn't an indirect thing where somebody's an Anglican who has enslaved people. The church itself, purely for profit, had its own slave plantations.
Right. And we
Um,
Uh,
even have papal bulls from the Pope that gave his blessing for the transatlantic slave trade. And also we have institutions that were owned by the Catholic Church, where they profited and owned slaves.
but
And
we should
here in the United States, and also in other parts of the Western Hemisphere.
but
So
we shouldn't only be talking about the Bible, the Quran as well, which is of course
that's correct. That
yep.
is
an
correct.
Abrahamic. We forget that, in fact, even before the transatlantic slave trade, there was Arab slave trading.
That's right.
Oh
Places like
yes.
That's right.
Zanzibar and so on. That in
Right.
fact,
Mhm.
not only enslaving African people, but also turning them into eunuchs and so on. So
That's
actually,
correct.
What wasn't
physically restricting
Codrington?
them.
Wasn't Codrington College? The guy Codrington, he owned slaves too. That I think he donated the lands to the church.
Yeah,
Codrington College.
yeah. I think originally it was a plantation, if,
Right, and
if I'm correct.
owned by Codrington, but he donated that to the church. and then
Yes,
he
it's a
owned
seminary
slaves.
now. It's a seminary
Right,
facility.
it's a
It's meant to
seminary,
house.
but then he donated to them.
Yes, it is. It's now run by the Anglican
Right,
Church.
but I meant then he
Seminary.
donated, and
I
was
believe so.
he
Yeah,
a slave owner too?
I believe that is correct. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah. But Michelle, I'd let you wrap up, and also I noticed there's some questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to take those or, but
Yeah.
I'll hand over to you and I'll let you do the wrapping up.
Yes, I think we were able to cover quite a lot in the hour and a half. There were some questions earlier up, and we started to talk about some. We started to answer some of them already. Like earlier on, I had Darlene Field in the Zoom chat asking, "How do you address the statement that reparations can be considered funding in the form of scholarships and grants, etc.?" I think we tackled that already when we talked about systemic roots, but we also challenged it to say that we need both systemic roots and actual money being paid to descendants of slaves, that it can't be one or the other. And later down, we had Afro-Humanists saying no price can be placed on the lasting effect of slavery. And she doesn't think any amount will suffice. And we kind of already kind of dealt with that already. That has to be an ongoing. Cynthia was talking about a 10-year, over 10 years in terms of payments to descendants of slaves. And coupled with the systemic change in terms of, for us in Barbados or in the Caribbean, that systemic change or that injection of capital into for hospitals, for technology in terms of the eradication of illiteracy and what's not, injection of funds and capital so that Barbados and the Caribbean can get more on par with the superpowers who benefited from slavery, because we are way behind. We spend about 70% the government spends about 70% of their funds to try to breach, to close that gap in terms of education, how far back we are in terms of healthcare. So what she's saying here, Maya Atkinson also kind of follows on from there. She said, at the Afro-Humanist, I believe this too, which is why I advocate for equity over cash, but we're saying both. We're saying both, right? Is that what we're saying? And so
Yes.
Cynthia, can you commented at the end there, you want to just take a bit on that quickly?
Yeah, when I said I advocate for both cash and equity,
Yeah.
like real money was made off of slavery.
Yeah, real money. Yeah.
Real,
Actual,
this was,
see it.
dollars,
Yeah.
pounds, I'm saying this was strictly a capitalistic entity in order for money to be and wealth to be garnered, right? So, and you think about like all the wages that have been stolen from slaves who worked plantations, who built buildings. Slaves built the White House. They weren't compensated for that. Slaves built a part of our capital in Washington, D.C. Slaves built the railroads. They weren't compensated for that. That I remember there was I don't know, he can call himself an economist. I forgot his name, but he's German. Arthur, you can help me out. You know who I'm talking about. Thomas Kramer, that's his name. Thomas Kramer came up with a mathematical equation where he worked out you had over 6.9 quadrillion dollars of stolen wages from slaves if you count in the hours that were worked combined plus inflation. That's a hell of a lot of money. That's more money than what the United States is worth. The United States is worth about $267 trillion. So, you just think about like all this money that was taken away from these people and not able to pass on a penance to their descendants. It's egregious. So no, we need dollars. Like I can all the different things that needs and I cannot get them over on a hope and a wish and a prayer. Like if he needs a coat, I need to buy that. If he needs shoes, I need to buy that. You know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, no, we need money too.
I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to Cynthia. Thank you for coming, and thank you to Lalo for co-moderating, and persons who are watching on YouTube, and those who tuning maybe on Facebook. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your space and your time this evening. I hope we have lent our piece to this topic that needs to continue to be aired and to be explained and to be advocated and to be pressed in the public's ear and in those who are in power in their ears as well. This will not be the last one that we will have, but I hope this at least is a good start. And I want to say thank you very, 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 very much. That's it. That's it. Any final words, Lalu?
No,
Any final words? You good?
thank you very much, everybody. And Michelle, you did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final
Yes,
words,
you
Cynthia?
did.
Philip, any final words?
Yeah, reparations now.
Reparations now. Yes.
Yeah, same thing.
Same
Reparations.
thing.
No, not
Yes.
later.
Right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a good rest of the weekend and a good evening. Bye-bye. Okay. Make sure that.
Yeah, that was really really good, really good. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure Philip said that the Barbados Humanists, before this event tonight, they went out as a group to ask people, where was God when slavery happened? Let's see. I think that's how they asked the question. Where was God during slavery? And I think they got a few people. They must have recorded some things because Barbados is very religious country, and so I would be very interested to find out what the people think. Where was God during slavery? What was God doing? Where was he? Why did he just go hiding when slavery was happening? So that would be something I definitely would hope that Philip can just give us yeah. Let's see here, guys. Let's see. That would be something I definitely would love to see. One second. Here we go. That's better. Sorry about that. I recently, what I've been doing, a lot of trying to figure things out on the computer, learning new things, new tricks. So yes, keep people poor and uneducated, and they will never turn away from their God. So the God, the whole God system, it's just not working. It's not working for the people in the long term. There's a video. Let's see here. Oh, I don't know if we can have a look at it. One second. Let me see if I can find it. Um, just give me a minute. I'll find it here. Let's see. A video someone sent to me. So these evangelical Christians, they're going to parts of the world that have not been um, exposed to what do you call those areas where the people are still very primitive and still very they haven't been exposed to the modern system of living. So these people, they're actively going, these missionaries, actively trying to penetrate in those communities and trying to go preach their Jesus to them. And this particular place, they gave pushback during this period of What was that sound? I just heard a sound. Sorry, guys. I heard this little sound, but I didn't know where it came from. Anyway, during the COVID, these people were trying to penetrate in these communities. Now, these people in these communities have no immunity to the diseases that haven't been introduced to them. And these evangelist people, well, this was going back many years ago. This wasn't about COVID. This was about different parts, right? That these evangelicals were trying to go preach their religion to. They get there and introduce some new diseases to these people who have no immunity, and they just wipe out a whole community of people, wipe out loads of people's their lives are just taken out because these people want to come and preach Christ to them. One second. People, it wasn't you. Okay, right. One second. Let me see if we can find that video. I won't show all of it. I'll just show the part where they sued. They sued the. I think I'm not sure who they sued. I only watched it briefly. One sec. I'll find it. Oh, there we go. The indigenous tribes push back against evangelical missionaries, and they won. Fantastic, amazing. Just one second, guys. I will. Okay, let me share my screen here. How's everyone doing this evening? I hope you're all doing well. Evening, morning. People Thulu, what time is it where you are? I always have to remember that with People Thulu, his timing is always just completely way off. So I wouldn't know. What time is it, People Thulu? So what I will do, I will just share parts of the video, not all of it, because of course copyright, and I'll put the link. Only about 16 minutes. No, sorry, no. Yeah, 16 minutes long. So not let me put this here, put it on 1.25. I'll just share parts of it. Let's see.
Therefore, when you teach them that there's one true God, there's one God above all, then you have to teach them that.
Yeah, this was the part where these people took their diseases to this community. Okay, have a look here.
E a nossa grande preocupação nesse momento de pandemia é manter a nossa.
Right, okay, here we go. Right.
Through. O sinal tá bem ruim hoje.
His cousin has just heard word that his relative has passed away deep in the jungle.
Ramara.
8:40.
E eu vou abrir. Tudo bem. Perdi meu pai recentemente, perdi um irmão, perdi um primo, isso e aquilo, de doenças diferentes. E a nossa grande preocupação nesse momento de pandemia é manter a nossa comunidade isolada. Por isso que a gente fez esse processo contra os missionários.
Over the decades, missionaries have promised tribes a better life through schooling, healthcare, and Christianity.
Aqui, realmente, nós estamos aqui.
These communities, these evangelicals have promised them what? Better life, schools, and Christianity. How about we give them the schools? Give them the better life. Give them everything else except the Christianity. Is that possible? Is that possible? So you would not give these people this thing without the added what you call it now, your Christianity. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Communities like this, do you think that they would benefit from I don't know. From being modern, is this better for these people? Someone said something in the chat. Over time, these economies, they naturally would develop over time if allowed to just carry on the way. Because look at this, some parts of this place here. Anyway, let me play the video and you guys can just have a look at this. Yeah.
Trazer a palavra de Deus para esse povo, por causa da palavra de Deus fala sobre.
Look at this, guys. Guys, look at this picture here. When I was watching this, I didn't like this at all. I did not like this. Huh? So these people are naked. You go, okay, you're dressed and everything. Very soon he'll be telling these people, look, you're being naked. This is not the way to dress. My shirt and my denim, this is the way to do it. These people, you can see them, they're not ashamed. They walk around like they're not ashamed at all. But these evangelicals will come and introduce to them, they should feel shame for how they are dressed because they don't look like others. They don't look like us. Phil, you there? Can't hear you, Phil. So it's 8:40. Is it a.m.?
Hi.
Hello, Phil. Phil, we really enjoyed that.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, Phil's on the phone. Looks like Phil's on the phone. All right, let's carry on with this video. Guys, what do you think of this white evangelical man standing there hugging, not hugging, but being affectionate with these
Ah,
people here? What do you think?
let's see.
I don't know. I just don't like this picture. I don't like what I see in front of me. I don't like it.
Ah,
I
well,
do not like it.
so this is a missionary.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, missionary.
because the word
Yes.
of God means love.
Uh-huh.
His
That
face
look,
don't
the
look
word
very
of God,
loving.
this word of God means love, Phil. Look at the love. All right.
His face does
I
not
ain't
look
saying
loving.
anything. I ain't saying
I have to say
anything.
it.
I am not saying anything. All right.
I
But to
I
tribes with
hope
no
y'all
natural immunity
Okay.
enjoyed.
against disease.
Yes, we did, Phil. And you said that you guys had gone out asking people where was
Yes,
God during slavery. That's something I
slavery.
think would be nice to see.
Right.
What
And
what
Cynthia
were
did
they?
mentioned yeah, because I had told her about it, so she did mention it about a conversation she had with a Christian person in Facebook. Similar
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
similar thing to
Okay.
what the encounter. Yeah.
Okay. Oh wow. Nice. So maybe later on it'd be nice to
Yeah.
hear what or if there was a video or something, just to
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what the conversation was like, what people
Like, yeah.
think. Because
Yeah. Or even
Barbados is
some.
quite religious, right?
Yes, very.
Very
Very.
religious.
Because I actually had, remember I told you I'd recorded something where at school Gideon's came, but
Oh,
unfortunately the SD card, that part of the card was corrupted. So I
the
didn't have it.
Gideons are still active.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes.
Okay,
And they
they're
because
still
for the
active.
2 years they didn't come to schools, they were apparently going to schools and
Mm-mm.
spreading the
Gideons going to schools.
yeah. Here in
Wow.
Barbados, the government allows it. It's
Uh,
ridiculous.
there was a knock on my door today, and I was thinking, I'm not expecting anyone. Let me go. I go up there, go and get the door, and these two women, just the way they were dressed, it was obvious
Uh,
just by looking at
uh-huh.
them. It was obvious. And the lady says, "Oh, we haven't been able to go out for a couple of years, but now we're able to go to people's door to tell them about the good news."
Wow.
I said, "Ma'am,
Oh,
I was on my way to get my
mm-hmm.
COVID booster, and by the way, this arm is completely dead." I said, "Ma'am, I need to go now. Now is not the time." There were Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh my! For a good
Oh, yeah.
COVID kept them away, and
Yeah.
now they're back again.
Back again.
Huh? These people are back again. Anyway,
Yeah.
Phil, we were just looking at this video
Uh-huh.
someone sent to me, and
Okay.
it is about the indigenous tribes. They push back on evangelical missionaries.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay.
um, just looking at the lasting effect of slavery, right?
Right.
Lasting effect of going into people's lands and taking over and, preaching, introducing them to your Jesus and to the effects. Some people are still feeling the effects today. And yet, as
Wow.
we're still talking about the
Mm-hmm.
effects of what that did, God knows how many years ago,
Well, yeah.
these evangelicals are still trying to penetrate in
This is in
indigenous.
Brazil, right?
Hang on,
I think
let
these
me
people
see.
are Brazilian now.
Let me put the link to the video in the chat so anyone's interested. It's quite a recent video as well.
Okay.
Quite recent. Library
Or
history.
Papua New Guinea. Is it Papua New
No, no, no,
Guinea?
no, no, it's
Oh, no,
not.
not that one. No,
It's
it's
not
not
Papua
that
New
one
Guinea.
where that guy
This
went
is
and
in
he got killed.
Brazil. This is in
Right,
Brazil.
Brazil. I figured so. That's the Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
the Amazonian.
Yes, Amazon.
From looking
Yes,
at them, yeah, I can see.
yes,
Yeah, they're
yes.
Amazonians there, and they
This
push
is in
back
Brazil.
against because
Oh,
there's some.
they sued them and won, I think. Hang on, I'll just play a bit of it. I'm not going to
Okay,
share all of it
right.
because copyright. Yeah, so that's the link to the video if anyone is interested to go see. Uh yeah. And Phil, I've sent it to you in private chat. All right, let's have a look at this here. Where is the video now? Where is the video? There we go. Okay.
Contact brought devastation. After this tribe was
Hang on.
contacted by the
Hang on.
Americans, a quarter.
Let me take that back a little bit so you can hear that the contact from these evangelicals to these indigenous people brought devastation.
Americans,
boy.
a quarter of their members died.
Hang on, listen. Just listen to this now.
Through schooling, healthcare, and
Oh
Christianity.
no, actually, no. Phil, you need to hear this bit. They want to give them. Here we, okay, here we go.
Pandemia é manter
Alright,
a
here
nossa
we go now.
comunidade isolada. Por isso que a gente fez esse processo contra os missionários.
Over the decades, missionaries have promised tribes a better life through schooling, healthcare, and Christianity.
Aqui,
One of the rituals condemned by missionaries is ayahuasca. Marubo's cousin.
Phil, I think we would leave. We wouldn't do all of it because what happened?
What happened there?
What happened? Did I?
You hit back.
Oh goodness, what happened?
Oh no, we went through there. We went there. So
No.
we went there before.
Oh, okay. No, it looks like I went up for a second.
Oh,
Policy violation.
oh, she showed naked people's
Oh
YouTube.
goodness.
Where?
Oh, YouTube bot hit the stream. Oh, okay.
But isn't this on the YouTube?
Hey,
Before?
this is on a YouTube video.
This is ridiculous. Oh
no.
my goodness.
And I was just saying, okay, Phil, that's it.
Because this is reporting. This is reporting. It's not anything to do with porn or anything like that.
Never mind. By the time I'm done now, look in my YouTube studio, there'll be a message from there saying, "Oh, you blah 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 blah." Never mind. It's
Theo, say you're back on.
Yeah,
right,
but I am back on. Yes. The Christians came after the broadcast. I don't think
Mm,
this is the Christians. I think this is YouTube. This
yeah.
is YouTube. Yeah. When you show some things, they don't like it. But the things it's right there on the. I mean, someone sent me the link and
Right.
said you would be
But it's on
interested in
there.
this.
YouTube is
Never mind.
ridiculous anyway.
Mm, never mind. Ishak. Hello,
I
Ishak.
see that. I saw that.
Ishak
Isha.
says, Afro-Humanist, you believe in evolution. Islam believes in evolution.
Oh my gosh.
Mm, mm. Well, guys, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been really good.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil,
To
after
follow,
watching, yeah, it was really
yeah, the
nicely to
slavery issue and
follow up.
seeing how religion now comes in
Yes.
as usual. Same
Hmm.
thing, similar thing in Africa. And then of course exploitation
Hmm.
happens.
Now, what we have in Africa, right? You know, the indigenous people that they're trying to desperately trying to reach,
Yeah.
that they've been kicked out of that region
Mm-hmm.
for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if these people are allowed to penetrate in these communities. Give them 50 years, 50, 60, 70 years, and
Mm-hmm.
see what will happen then. You will now have what we have in Africa when it
Africa,
comes
yeah.
to Christianity.
Yeah.
There's church
Everywhere and
every
grifters.
corner of the street.
And grifters
Christianity
grifting
has now become the cancer to the society.
society, yeah.
Pastors will build schools from the monies that
Mm-hmm.
have been gathered in the church. They will build schools.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the people we want to build a school, we want to build a university. All the people would donate. They will give everything to make sure that that school is open. And once the school is open, next thing you hear is this is an international school. We have to charge international rates.
Mm-hmm.
Members of the church their children cannot now attend the school because the rates, because they think the school is high class schools, and it's an
Mm.
investment. Now it now becomes an investment for the church. When they were collecting monies
Yeah.
for this school, they were told the people that this is our
To
church,
help. Yeah.
our this is for us.
Us. Yeah.
We all will benefit. And people are thinking, maybe my children will get to go to that school because I'm a member. I better stay in this church for the next 10 years. At least by the time it's
Mm.
done, my children would have reached a certain age or whatever. And come that time, their children cannot even go to that school because now it's become a prestigious school.
Yeah.
Only the rich can attend.
Mm-hmm.
So when the church do something, when the church do when they do charity work, their charity work only comes with conditions.
Yeah. Carrot and stick.
Their charity work come with conditions. We
Mm-hmm.
want you to, and now they're trying to enter into the government, enter into
Yeah.
power,
Mm-hmm.
because now there's lots of
Control.
religion is big business.
Yeah.
If you
And
can
it's
get
all about
pastors,
control.
if you can get pastors uh to talk about who you should or shouldn't vote for,
Mm-hmm.
you see pastors going to visit the president. What
Yeah.
for?
You know?
Why are president? Why are pastors good? Oh well. Ishak would know better. Ishak would know about in Nigeria how these presidents they're scrambling for the opportunity to go and sit with president 5-10 minutes. I don't know what they go there to go and do. I don't know. Are they going to discuss what is the discussion about when a man of God is sitting down with president? They're all, what do they talk about? Is the man of God trying to convert the president to Christianity, which I don't think. I don't think that at all. In fact, I don't think God is brought up in that conversation at all.
Mm. Oh gosh. White label Americans, you gotta read before. So if you're familiar with Brazilian history, you will
Mhm.
know that what is happening now is a repetition of history. If Brazilians vote Bolsonaro, it will set them back to the era where they almost wiped out indigenous and black people.
Oh wow.
It's repetition, history.
Hey, 2X. Let me see 2X. 2X is they're
Yes,
going to
says
go and
to
spread
spread
lies.
lies. Yeah.
No, not just to spread lies. How about they're going to go and foster relationships, those contracts, those business, if you
Mm,
support me, my church alone, we have 1 point something million people.
mm-hmm.
If you give me contracts, I will talk to my people. I will encourage my people
The
to
people
vote
to
for you
support
in the
you.
next election.
Mm-hmm. Ah,
Some
boy.
greedy
Greedy
people.
people, yeah. Real greedy.
Well, Phil, have you got
Yeah.
any dreams coming up again soon?
Um, right now, not exactly.
Okay,
But hopefully we should be doing probably in November
okay.
a shit show.
Oh yes, yes, yes,
Peoples.
yes.
If
Lots of
you enjoyed what we did last time with Cynthia, SR, Oz, Jenna, what else was
that
there?
was really good.
Hmm?
That was really
Oh
good.
yeah.
I enjoyed that stream. Yes,
And the whole theme, we are now called the shit
the shit show.
team. Yeah, so we now call it the shit show.
Yes,
Hmm.
the shit show.
What was it? Secular,
Secular rarity.
no, I mean the acronym.
Oh, I don't remember now.
T is for team, I is international, right?
What is it
It's
again?
the something humanist international team.
Okay, I
I
remember.
think it's the secular
I need
humanist
to go looking.
international team.
I need to go
Yeah,
looking.
yeah.
Right, guys.
So
I will
okay, guys.
definitely be back tomorrow. But please, guys, do me one big favor, and that is, if you're not subscribed to Phil's channel, make sure to subscribe. Phil, please put the link to your channel.
Yeah,
And any
yeah.
of you who wants to broadcast your channel, please let us know. Let the mods just let us go and subscribe and
You
uh
know,
um subscribe to one another, because how else can we promote this message? How else can we
yeah.
spread the word, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
by getting those numbers up. It's by sharing. And listen, guys, share the videos. If you've got platforms, if you've got links where you can share my streams. Yes. Or else, I would ask those sex demons to visit you. The oral sex demons. I would, if you don't share, I would ask the oral sex demon in particular.
Oh
You, the
God.
ladies, the oral sex demon will put its dick inside your mouth. The men, the oral sex demon will sit on your face when you're sleeping. If you don't
Mm,
share and subscribe, please, yes, let's put the links to people's. So whose
yeah,
channel?
I
Whose
put
channel
my
is this?
channel. That's
Is that
that
yours?
one I put in mine
Okay, so you've put
and
yours and
yours.
atheist
Yeah,
mo. Atheist
and
mo.
yours.
Yes, atheist mo. How are you doing, atheist mo? Hope you're well. Yes, atheist mo could do with the subs. Absolutely. Absolutely. He could do with the subs. See if we can put this link.
With the what?
I can't really go looking for links right now.
Right.
So
What you wanted?
Atheismo and
Atheist small.
white label American podcast, please. Yeah, that's my friend. White label
You said
American
atheist small.
atheist
SMAL.
atheist Mo.
Mo MOE.
MOE, yes. He's in chat. You like oral this.
Atheist. Ah,
Ah,
oh
you like
God.
oh my god. These people.
Okay,
Huh?
right.
You
All right.
like oral sex?
I
Feel
have
sorry.
his thing. I am going to post it in the chat.
Yes, please do.
Copy
On the time clockwork. Okay.
this.
Apparently, I'm blaspheming. Oh my goodness. The Afro Humanist. You are blaspheming against the sex demon. No, I'm not. I'm trying to get the sex demon some more sex.
You know?
Look, that's
Of
all
course.
I'm trying to do. It's a win-win situation. The sex demons having some, and it's I don't want to say victims. It's they're victims, aren't they? Right? If the sex demon's having sex with you, you're a victim, aren't you? Phil?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Ah, God.
You're a victim of the sex demon. Oh my goodness. It's just sickening when you think about the sex demon.
You know?
I'm trying to get some more sex for the sex demon. The sex demon should even be happy. How can I blaspheme against the sex demon? No.
No, of course not.
Please guys, let's go ahead and
Who was the other
subscribe.
person from you said it
Okay,
was
that is
I put atheist more on my channel, and who was the other one? The other
White
person?
Label American Podcast.
Oh, White Label.
Yes. White Label American Podcast is asking, what is Phil's channel? So Phil's
I put it
channel
in
is the
there just
very
now.
first link.
The
The
link here
very
you would
first link.
see. I put it in again. I
Oh,
put it in.
Hidden Tech Gem says my account got banned for wait, I'm looking at the
You said
comment here.
White Label. Sorry, White
Yeah,
Label.
White Label American Podcast.
Oh, American. It should appear here now.
Wait, where's that comment by Hidden Tech Gems? Yeah, it says my account got banned for a USB review.
Review.
Had to go
By
through hell to
USB.
get it back.
But
USB review?
The USB on a computer.
That's interesting.
Why? Oh gosh. All right, this is White Labels. Ouch.
USB.
Right.
Oh, and my friend Perilla Time. Let me try and find it. Not leave Phil to do all the work. Silly girl.
Oh, you're not sick.
Perilla Time.
You know
Let's
I
see.
will.
Perilla Time. Perilla Time. I wonder what Perilla stands for.
Yeah.
But Perilla Time's not here, so
Perilla Time.
Perilla Time.
Perilla's Time.
Have you found it? Or I'm trying to get it myself.
I am not seeing it. Is it on a different name? As what I am seeing is not Perillas.
I found it.
Spell it. Oh, you
I
found
found it.
it?
Yeah, I found it. That's Perilla Time there. Yeah, so that one that I've
Oh
just
yeah, I
posted.
found
So
it.
Atheismo has to go. Right, see you later, Atheismo. Hidden Tech Gem says
Bye.
Hidden Tech Gem's channel is back on, and that's good. Good to hear. But for USB, why would you? What was it about the USB? I don't know, guys. Please, guys, let's go ahead. Your subscriptions, your
Matter.
subscriptions, yeah, they matter a lot.
Yeah.
Um, they matter a lot. So yes, I will definitely be back tomorrow. Phil,
Yeah.
at least you've got your stream out the way. So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
you'll be a lot more
More.
relaxed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So
They said they made
we'll
a
see.
mistake. Nothing that went against TOS. Really? Wow. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm. Parallel time. You put parallel time. Okay, good.
Wow.
Parallel time hasn't been in the chat today. So
Yeah.
never mind. He's my friend. Steve
Yeah.
McRae, manager. Hey, they keep edging me. Who's edging you?
You know, is he talking about YouTube?
What happened?
YouTube
Broadcast is back.
agenda?
What's happening? Is something wrong?
There's something wrong?
I don't know. Said broadcast is back. I don't know what that's
I
about.
don't know what that
Okay. Anyway, we're actually
means.
done. We're done
Yeah.
for the night. So
Mm-hmm.
guys, if anyone wants
Thank
to
you.
if you would like people to subscribe to you, just in the comment section there is you can put the links to your channel there. Oh, it stopped on your end. Okay, I don't know
Oh,
why.
why it was still
I don't
on
know.
my end? I don't know.
I honestly don't know.
Might not be. Might be from
Mm.
their end.
Hang on, just give me 1 second. Let me check something. If there was something wrong, um YouTube would have
Mm.
sent me an email saying we've had
Yeah.
to do something to your stream because you were streaming something I did, but there's nothing there. Maybe later. Maybe they'll send something later. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. Please don't forget
Mm-hmm.
to like, to share, subscribe to me as well. While you're subscribing to others, make sure to subscribe to me. Thank you
Will
all.
do. Yeah.
And we will see you tomorrow, definitely. So you all take care of yourself and good night.
Good night,
Good night, everyone.
everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wide Label American Podcast has just subscribed to
To
you.
my channel.
So
Yep.
that's good. That's good.
Good. Yep.
Good
Yep.
night, everyone,
Thank
and see you
you.
later.